Live from Columbia, this is WIS News 10 at 5. Live, local, now.
Week 4 of the Alec Murdaugh trial finally wrapped up. Prosecution and defense attorneys having a big emphasis on today's testimony as Alec Murdaugh faced direct and redirect on that testimony, on that witness stand.
A lot of compelling testimony today. The defense going after Alec Murdaugh and giving him the opportunity to explain why he lied about certain things, while prosecution going after him about lying in the first place.
Our Greg Adeline is joining us live from Walterboro to break down some of those big moments today. Greg, you've done an incredible job. So much ground to cover, but help us to drill down on some of those moments that might help push the jury one way or another.
Yeah, Judy, Billie Jean, there's certainly a lot. The big takeaway from this is that the defense is stipulating, they're admitting, and Alec Murdaugh admitted from the witness stand that, yes, he is a liar. He lies about a lot of things. Lied to clients face-to-face. Lied about different circumstances of this case. But one thing that he did not lie about, he says, is whether or not he killed his wife and son. Adamant, combative at times, saying that he did not do it and that he would never do anything. And the choice of his wording in some ways, also somewhat curious, say that he would never do anything to intentionally hurt his wife and his son. So the defense is admitting that he's a liar in many ways, but they say he's not a killer. Meanwhile, the cross-examination of Alec Murdaugh was exhaustive. It lasted nearly a day and a half. Some key takeaways out of that. Creighton Waters, you could tell, at least toward the end of that cross-examination, in some ways almost seemed a little fatigued. He was laying out case after case after case after case, a laundry list of people that Alec Murdaugh had lied to. And then he showed the body camera from Daniel Green. He was a first responder to Moselle on the night of June the 7th, 2021. A body camera footage that showed that Alec Murdaugh was already misleading investigators before he was even asked any questions. You'll remember yesterday that Alec Murdaugh said that the reason that he lied to investigators about being at the kennels on June the 7th, 2021 is because he had a paranoia about SLED, the law enforcement agency. He said that it was drug-induced in some ways. But he said that when he was questioned that night, that's what caused him to lie. Creighton Waters pinning that down in many ways today, saying, when did you decide to lie to law enforcement? When did you decide? He spent a good 20, 30 minutes on that. And really, Daniel Green's video showed that Alec Murdaugh was misleading investigators before SLED even got there. So really kind of hammering an inconsistency as he wrapped up his cross-examination. And so all of this was kind of a theme throughout the day, that Creighton Waters would say that only when confronted with irrefutable facts, only confronted with the truth, then you might get Alec Murdaugh to say something that was true. Only then would he ever come clean. And only when that kennel video produced his voice on it, prosecutors say, did he come up with a news story that he was, in fact, at the kennels June the 7th, 2021 at 8:44, 5 minutes before prosecutors say the murders happened. Prosecutors are saying that is only when he would come up with this news story. And really, Murdaugh sought to isolate his lie throughout the day, though admitting to lying for months to investigators, to his family, pretty much to everyone else. And really, it was that flurry of phone activity at 9:02 to 9:06 that was really so compelling in just a lot of ways, as prosecutors sought to show that Alec Murdaugh was creating an alibi in that moment, that really he had no good answer for what he was doing before he left for Moselle. And that it was these phone calls that he was making where prosecutors say, well, you were trying to make an alibi, weren't you? And you never checked on your wife before you left, did you? And Alec Murdaugh essentially said, well, I had no reason to check. But really today, the big goal was tightening up that timeline, especially as we talk about Alec Murdaugh finally admitting that he was at the kennels at 8:44. Well, that timeline got so much tighter, saying that, you know, eventually they got Alec Murdaugh to admit that he left the kennels at 8:47, that pretty much he couldn't really remember details about what he said to Maggie and Paul Murdaugh before he left, and he left quickly, and that he, in that moment, was basically they were the only ones there, that the dogs didn't detect anyone out in the woods. And so that really kind of pinned down that Alec Murdaugh was there and that there was no one else there. And that's something that prosecutors sought to capitalize on, saying that really it creates a scenario where only Alec Murdaugh sits in that circle of interest about whether or not he committed these murders. Another key moment was when he described arriving to the scene at Moselle with law enforcement that night on June the 8th in the early morning hours, saying that he checked the pulses of Maggie and Paul and then tried to lift Paul before he called 911. Alec Murdaugh said, "I didn't say that." And so prosecutors said, roll the tape. Take a listen.
Over to Maggie. Actually, I think I tried to turn Paul over first. I tried to turn him over, and I don't know, I figured it out. His cell phone popped out of his pocket. I started to try to do something with it, thinking maybe, but then I put it back down really quickly. Then I went to my wife, and I could see.
Did you touch Maggie at all?
I did. I touched them both.
Okay.
I tried to take. I tried to do it as limited as possible, but I tried to take their pulse on both of them. And I called 911 pretty much right away.
Now, one other key detail in all of that, through that exchange, is that Alec Murdaugh was wearing the same clothes that he said he changed into at dinner. That T-shirt, that shorts, those shoes. And you'll remember the testimony from Laura Rutland, and another facet that was mentioned during this cross-examination is that Alec Murdaugh that night, despite checking pulses in a very grisly, very bloody crime scene, that he was spotless, really, from head to toe. No blood on him. In fact, Alec Murdaugh from the stand just yesterday saying he only had blood on his fingertips while checking the pulses of Paul and Maggie. Some of the big points that prosecutors made in their cross-examination of Alec Murdaugh. And this went on for, again, about a day and a half. It was exhaustive, but now that passes us, and that is really where we're at in this trial, in this phase. Let's get over to Nick Neville joining us. Nick, certainly we were listening throughout the day, listening to how Alec Murdaugh in many ways would repeat the question that he was asked back to the prosecutor, almost as though he was kind of thinking through these answers before he gave them. A lot of testimony to go through here, Nick.
Yes, absolutely, Greg. So lead prosecutor Creighton Waters really grilling Alec Murdaugh throughout the day about his lies, including most notably his assertion that he was never at the family dog kennels the night of the murders. We, of course, now know that that was a lie, and throughout Waters' questioning of Murdaugh, he kept emphasizing what he called Murdaugh's new facts. The defendant asserting that he was in fact cooperative with the murder investigation.
Other than lying to them about going to the kennel, I was cooperative in every aspect of this investigation.
Very cooperative, except for maybe the most important fact of all, that you were at the murder scene with the victims just minutes before they died.
Waters tightening the timeline for Murdaugh, who says he was only at the kennels for a few minutes. Today, he revealed that the family dogs were not barking or acting unusually when he was there.
There was nobody else around.
All right, good.
For them to sense.
At times, Murdaugh was unclear about the details from the night of June 7, 2021, including being unsure whether he said goodbye to his wife before heading back to the main house, and what he did around 9:02 p.m., when his phone detects 283 steps.
And you disagree to my characterization that you've got a photographic memory about the details that have to fit now that you know these facts, but you're fuzzy on the other stuff that complicates that. You disagree with that?
I do disagree with that. I think that I have a good memory about a lot of things on this.
While being pressed about the moments when his phone wakes up, Murdaugh says,
I know what I wasn't doing, Mr. Waters, and what I wasn't doing is doing anything, as I believe you've implied, that I was cleaning off or washing off guns, or putting guns in a raincoat, and I can promise you that I wasn't doing any of that.
At one point, Murdaugh blames the 2019 fatal boat crash for Maggie and Paul's deaths, claiming that half-truths and misrepresentations in the media motivated someone to kill.
So what you're telling this jury is that it's a random vigilante.
That's your
the 12-year-old 5'2" people that just happened to know that Paul and Maggie were both at Moselle on June 7th, that knew that they would be at the kennels alone on June the 7th, that knew that you would not be there, but only between the times of 8:49 and 9:02, that they show up without a weapon, assuming that they're going to find weapons and ammunition there, that they commit this crime during that short time window, and then they travel the same exact route that you do around the same time to Alameda. That's what you're trying to tell this jury?
You got a lot of factors in there, Mr. Waters, all of which I do not agree with, but some of which I do.
Waters also ran through a list of people that Murdaugh lied to, trying to paint the picture of a dishonest man who will lie to anyone, including this jury, when faced with accountability. Reporting in Walterboro, Nick Neville, WIS News 10.
And lead prosecutor Creighton Waters ended his cross-examination by playing a portion of the body camera footage from Sergeant Daniel Green. You may remember that Sergeant Green was the first to arrive on the scene. He notes that all the reasons that Murdaugh admitted to lying, including distrust of SLED, were not yet relevant. Remember, Murdaugh said several times the reason that he lied about not being at the kennels was because he did not trust the state because of the ongoing investigation into the boat crash involving his son. Well, that video showing before Murdaugh was even interrogated or any questioning by police officers, he decided to lie about his whereabouts the night that his son and wife were murdered. The court will resume 9:30 on Monday, and of course, you can continue to stick with WIS TV as we follow the trial. You can watch the streaming platforms there on your screen to stay up to date, minute by minute, with the Murdaugh murder trials.